Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Sivan. She is a former professional investor turned author, and she is bringing readers into the fast paced financial world of Tel Aviv through her contemporary romances. Using real financial scandals to frame her works, her stories center on smart men and women who are strong enough to be worthy of them. Welcome to the show, Sivan.
Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Sivan. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk about. We'll be talking about how one can use life experiences in their writing. So, a lot of learning that's going to happen from you in this show. But before that, we'll understand about your learnings, your journey of life, so that people know who they are listening to.
Okay, thank you, Ajay, for this introduction. Mia Sivan is my pen name. Sivan is my name that I use daily, and I just when someone chooses a pen name, it is very important. It will be something that they feel connection to you. So I just use something that I can connect to and feel very comfortable with. As you said, I used to be a professional investment manager. My formal education is a BA in Economics and Business Administration, MBA majoring in Finance and Accounting. So all my formal education is geared towards working in the finance industry. And I did that for nearly 30 years. I started working in 1991, going into managing OPM. OPM is what we call in the industry, OPM is other people's money. So this is the big money. This is pension funds, provident funds. This is the biggest money you can find because it's not yours, right? Everyone has to have a pension or some sort of savings, and professional investors have to invest it, and this is most of the money in the world. So I started doing that because, you leave university, and this is the first job I found. I did that until 2007, so for many years, and this gave me a perspective of how big money behaves, which is because people think that, well, I don't know what people think, but the investment management industry of course has many niches in it, and big money behaves totally differently than wealth, the way people manage their own personal wealth, or the way intraday money works, right? So I had a perspective on how big money works, how you are treated as a person when you manage big money. This is people treat you as if it is yours, which you have to learn pretty fast that it isn't. Not to get your head too big because it's not your money. You need to have respect for the money that you represent, and to be honest, which is something, again, this has nothing to do with what you learn in university. This is just life lessons, right? And being honest about managing big money sounds like, of course, yes, but no, a lot of scams and schemes in the finance world happen because people treat big money as a way to get to their means. And so when I decided to write, actually I'll get to how because it took me time to find the exact way I wanted to write a book. But that I did that until 2007, and then 2008 happened, and uh, everybody knows about 2008. But if you were in the finance industry, you were actually very directly connected to what happened. Like there were ripple effects all over the world, but the finance industry was the most direct way to be. So I lost my job. I had to find another one, etc., etc. And then I went on and did different stuff in the finance industry, which is um, I worked in marketing, and then I worked in managing wealth, which is for people, for wealthy people, well, not even that wealthy, but managing, looking your client in the eye, which is different than big money. And so my experience is long and varied. But there came a time after nearly 30 years when I felt like one more crisis in Russia is going to, you know, I'm not going to. Or so because what you do when you manage money is every crisis in the world affects your work. Whereas if you work maybe in another industry, if nothing happens to to the car industry, okay, you're okay. Um, I'm not talking about COVID, of course, which affected all the world, but even COVID the effect was very, very short-lived, and a lot of people just picked up if they weren't in the service industry. I mean, in the in restaurants or hotels or whatever. So, but the finance industry has to address almost any crisis. So you need to address it, think about it, live through it, say what you're going to do with it. So it wears you down. So after almost 28 years, on 29 years, never mind, a lot of years, I decided I'm going to launch on a second career. And when I came to find this second career, I actually had a coach that helped me do that, because actually writing books wasn't my first choice, even though I always loved to read. And I believe that everyone has at least one book in him, in her, in them. That is something I really believe. Everyone has at least one book in them. But the trick is the second book. So I went to I did, thinking, and they asked me what was the most positive feedback you ever got in your life. Not forget finance. What is the most positive feedback you got in your life from doing something which wasn't finance? And I said, they would always read aloud my essays or whatever in class, or my stories, and say, okay, so how about trying this? And so when I started writing, I was actually still working, because I didn't have the guts to go at it full time from the beginning. So I started writing just short stories, and I used Kindle Create to upload my book into Amazon, like that. And that was way back in 2015 or something like that. And nothing happened to the book, though, like I think 5 people bought it. And but I learned how to, I started doing stuff, right? And then later and then I thought, oh, well, if I can write a short story, maybe I can write a longer one. So then I sat down and write a whole book and sent it to all kinds of publishing houses and whatever, nada. But then I reread it and I didn't like it, so I never published it. And then when 2019 came and I decided I would go for it, I participated in a tweet competition. There used to be like tweet competitions where you put one tweet and then a publishing house would say, yeah, we like the tweet. Maybe we would like you to send us your first 7,500 words and your synopsis and what the book is about, and maybe we'll publish it. So one house liked my tweet, and suddenly I had to like my tweet, and I sent my first 7,500 words, and they loved it and they wanted to publish it. Oh no, they said no. They send the full manuscript. I didn't have a full manuscript. So for the next year, what I did was sit down and write the book. And this is, as you may remember, my third try or my fourth try after short stories. And I realized that what I needed to write about and what they liked in my story was the fact that I wrote about stuff that I knew. And if we go into advice now, there is an advice for beginning for writers: write what you know. You've probably heard it. And this is true for, I believe this is true for beginners. When you start writing, write what you know. And people feel your confidence through your writing. So what actually I wrote about was an investment management house, something very similar to what I've been working for 7 years. Before that, I was VP investment in the wealth management industry. I wanted to write about a very strong female character. Maybe people would call her bitchy. Can I say it here? Yes, it's okay. Maybe they wouldn't like her. But she is a woman who navigates almost a very male-dominated world, a very power-filled world in the sense that it has a lot of money in it. And what I used and what I wanted to have was the financial subplot that talks about a real case that happened to me when I found out that a friend of mine was involved in a very large scheme. He was in the papers. He's now in jail. So this was all true. But back when I found out, when I started getting texts and have you read that X, let's call him X, he's all over the papers, and I couldn't believe that this was true. We worked together for many, many years. He was always managing big money. Even when I left to manage small, I remember we had many conversations, and he said, that's what I like. I like big money. I like managing lots and lots of money. And looking back at it, if you are involved in a share manipulation scam, you better manage big money, right? Because otherwise you can't manipulate anything. So for me, writing this book was first about an environment that I knew. Second, about an experience that happened to me. I was very good friends with someone who wasn't honest, who didn't see things the way I did. And yet I really liked him. I still like him. And so in my first published book, because I depublished the book with the short stories, you can't find it anymore. I put it away. I didn't think it was good enough. So also a book is something you're willing to stand behind and say, yeah, this is mine. So this was a story I felt I could tell about a strong woman, and she finds herself friends with someone who doesn't see things the way she does. and then she has to decide whether she helps to take him down or not, etc. There's a whole investigation involved. This is a book, yes. There's a lot. Since I write steamy romance, there are like, well, I don't know how to say it otherwise. I'm going to say it. There's tons of sex, okay? Because this is the genre. But it's romance and sex and finance. So I find that, sex and money, what can be better together? So this is how I went about switching careers, is doing something that I felt comfortable with doing and writing about something that I know how to write. Wow, I talked for a long time. Huh?
Right, right. Well explained. And that's a lot of
I can't hear you. I can't hear you.
done. Okay. 1 second.
Oh,
Yeah, is it back?
yeah, it's back.
Okay, okay. And so, well, and in that a lot of learning can happen with this type of stories, and one can, utilize what they know to the type of things that they want to write. I want to understand for the audience. You talk about strong men and strong women. Uh, what do you mean by that? Especially in today's time, you see a lot of these notions have been created. When men and women they wanted to be strong, now people are saying women are more of a feminine role, so they should go for that, and women are seeking more of masculine men. So I want to understand in this backdrop, as an author, how do you see this whole concept of strong men and women, as well as masculinity and femininity? Are they the same thing or are they different things, especially from today's perspective? That's because that's the way you will have to build your character for the story. Secondly, the first book that you wrote, so you did not publish it. What did you do after that? Did you publish other books?
No, the book that I just told you about. It's published.
Okay.
This is published. It's out there. It's called Crunching Her Numbers. It's
Okay.
out there. It's my first book. It's from 2022. So as you can see, my journey began in 2019 with books that I wrote and didn't think I would publish. But this one is published, the one I just spoke about. When you ask about what do I mean about a strong woman, which is yes, what because I don't mean she goes. We're not talking about the super girl, yeah. We're not talking. She can't lift cars. That is not, of course, the meaning. She's. I think strong man or woman, never mind the gender, is someone who stands for their values. That even though society expects something from them, they stand for the values or what they think it's right, or they don't cave in just because maybe it will be better for even for the bank account. So that is what I mean when I say strong. And like for women from generations, outwards displays of aggressiveness or decisiveness was not. I think it didn't look people didn't like. I don't know. It seems like women that say what they think and are very sure of themselves are sometimes not as well liked as men who do the exact same thing. And so, because society, like for example, society, what if a woman smiles, a man doesn't have to smile, but a woman sometimes we want her to. We think it would be better if she does. And we learn from a very early age that if we smile and we speak less, maybe we'll get our way better, just in another way. There are studies that show that even if women and like in a meeting, a woman and a man speak the same amount of time, but she is conceived as speaking 30% more than he does.
Right. Right.
So um, when I write, but what I did as an exercise is I wrote a whole chapter as using a male name and male pronouns. And afterwards, what I did is I changed it into female, just to be in the right state of mind to write my female protagonist as a man. If you see the exercise.
Right, right, Sivan. Now, Tel Aviv. It's the place where most of your stories are based. A lot of people across the world, when they talk about big money, they generally think of places in the U.S., London, or other places. All those places where big investment. Israel, especially Tel Aviv, it is much more known as a part of Israel. A lot of tech companies nowadays, people know about Israel. A lot of tech companies are based, but not in terms of somehow. Some people know, those who are in the line, but general people, including me, that about the money part of it, that is where a lot of things. Tell us a bit about the investment part, the big money part, that place in Israel, in Tel Aviv, from an investment point of the big money, because you sort talked about uh, about that, about all the money part, and your stories are based out there. So help us understand a bit of uh, Tel Aviv in terms of the money part, how it operates.
Okay, so in investment management, there is what we call home bias, which is, for example, I am only familiar, even though India is like a very good large market, I'm only familiar with one ETF, one exchange traded fund, INR, I think it's called,
Yes.
and that's it, even though India is huge. So in Tel Aviv, and I, of course, investor in India, know a lot more about companies in India, etc. Um, the same in Israel. If you are an investment manager in Israel or any other place in the world, what you would happen is and I'm especially talking about small markets like Israel. India is, even though it's huge, the market is not that big. The traded market, it's getting bigger. I think you even almost bigger than China now in the emerging market world. But still, for big investors, what you do is you usually take 30-40% in your home country, and then you go out. So actually, the investment management industry, the big money, has to leave the small local market and usually invests in the United States, in Europe, in Japan, if you wish. Big money usually is too big for its own market. And I'm sure that happens in India as well, even though I'm not familiar with the pension fund industry. But I'm sure they take about 50% of the assets that they allocate and put it in the States. Now, if you were talking to a US person, they would tell you, no, 100% of my money can be in the US. But that is only because the US is so big in terms of the markets. Markets don't always reflect the economy. So, for example, in Israel, we have huge tech economy, but most of it is actually traded in the Nasdaq, not in Tel Aviv. So even though it is Israeli, it is in the US. If you want access to it, you actually have to go and invest in Nasdaq. So sometimes the locality of the company doesn't actually tell you where it's going to be traded. So big money in Israel will have around bond markets also are different than equity markets. We will have more home bias when it's bonds because there's the matter of the currencies, which I'm not going to go into right now, but because it's complicated and not that interesting maybe. But big money in Tel Aviv will have a lot of its assets allocated outside of Israel.
Right, right, Sivan. Now, weaving those experiences of, your investment, banking, and, management of other people's money, the big money, as well as travel. How does one weave those things into their, novels? Can it be sometimes, your mind will be boggled with so many of your personal experiences that it is very difficult to put all that into your characters. Otherwise, it almost there is a danger of all it becoming is an autobiography. And and you people themselves, sometimes people may find it fascinating, some people may find their own autobiographies as maybe very boring or something. I want to understand then, everyone who has, as you said, has at least one novel, one story for themselves, how do they bring that part into a novel or a story that people are ready to buy, people are ready to pay for?
Excellent question. Um, Writing a book is actually your first draft is going to be very, very, very different than the final product or the final book. And I actually had a lot more finance in the first few drafts than in the final version. And what I did was I took an editor that knows nothing about finance and thinks it's the most boring thing in the world. And I told her, whenever you feel this is too much for you, tell me, and she did. So what you need to do is to take someone who it doesn't think like you, doesn't like the same stuff as you, doesn't think that talking about bonds and equity is going to occupy them, and ask them for their honest opinion. So my advice is take an editor who is good at his job, but very different than you in her or her life experience and interests.
Right.
What happened was she said, "I don't get it. If and this is too long. I don't understand this. What did they do here?" So I would simplify and take out. So I can tell you that my first draft, I think, was about more than 120,000 words, and I cut it and edited and took out a lot of stuff, and I ended up with I think 25% of the novel went into the garbage. Yes, it's much shorter now, 89,000 words. So you need to be willing to listen to someone that you trust and doesn't like the same stuff as you.
Right, right, Sivan. One more thing, being from the industry, the investment industry, many a times inadvertently you may have the thing that you are not breaking any sort of, past, confidentiality
Ah,
agreements or any sort of a thing. It might be because you are so deep into that industry, you will always have that thing in mind. Someone who is not may not have it because they don't know. How does that work for, especially for people who are in different industries but may want to bring those characters to life with their own experiences about industry when it gets printed? Obviously, people who know about it can know about it, what you are hinting at. You just can't say all the time that it's fiction. So that thing is always going to be on their mind. How do you maintain that balance of authenticity as well as, not breaking any confidentiality agreements?
yes, what confidentiality clauses
Yeah.
are something that you are, even though I'm not in the industry anymore, I'm still compelled. And And I would never, for example, even now, if I want to, I will never talk about past clients. Okay, so this is something that is ingrained in you from very early on. But actually, the stuff that I wrote about is all in the papers. It went out into the newspapers. So what I was very, very careful to do is use only I would read the articles, and every now and again I would go back to the articles and see what they put out, what they knew. So what I would do is I would only use what is public knowledge. What went
Okay.
because everything I write about actually exploded out into the world. Nothing is still going on or still secret or anything. So that is
Right.
the way I went about it.
Right, Sivan. So, did any of your former colleagues ever get back to you that one of these characters is very similar to him or
Yes.
her? Did they? And what, were they happy or not so happy?
Well, uh, first of all, yes. Especially the first book, which I wrote very, very immediately after I left my last place of work, and I gave it to two colleagues to read, also to see if just to check on me professionally, because you always want, even though you are very sure. And one of them said, "Listen, this is at first I read it and I thought, oh, this is a boss." And then as the book went on, I said, oh no, it's a little bit like a boss, but it isn't. So, and they said, oh my God, and this is the building where we work. And I said, well, actually, I didn't use the building where we worked. I used like 3 blocks down, just so, but I use real locations. I use real addresses in Tel Aviv. So if you have my book, you can actually walk with it if you want or
Okay.
whatever. So I do use real locations. Like I don't make up squares in Tel Aviv. I use real squares or real streets. Um, so I get that reaction, but filtered, saying, "Oh, I thought it was him, but then it turned out no, it's someone different." So what you do is you use a small part of real characters and you mix them together to get a mishmash.
Right. But yours is not just about financial frauds, it's also about steamy romances. So some character that you bring to life from real world, and that character will say, listen, you have built up some scenes here which is creating havoc in his family life, which never happened, but you did it for your
No,
novel.
no,
Has it ever happened like that?
no, no, because usually I use like the what you call the minor characters or the not the protagonists are made up, totally made up. Um, and I got like reactions. Oh, because I sometimes say I base my characters on real people. I sometimes say that and say, oh, so where is like there's one character, a male protagonist in my first book. He's called Slava, totally made up. So Slava? Can we meet him? No, are you kidding? He's too good to be true. So
Right. Right, Sivan. Now, I want to understand this because you have dealt with big money. You have met people with big money.
I did.
You know, a lot of people know about money, read it in papers, read about the big players, but they actually do not know. They have these conspiracy theories and all. And a lot of people say, this big money is only a vehicle, it is about control. What is your understanding of big money? How does big money behave? And why does it behave like that? What is the objective? Is it to earn more money or is it about control? Because nowadays a lot of debate is going on everywhere in the world that, people are trying to look at building a new world order, and there is a but more about control through big money. Whatever you feel comfortable, you share in your own way.
Okay, I would say, first of all, we have to separate two notions. Institutional money, where I worked, behaves differently than than, for example, Jeff Bezos or what's his name, Elon Musk. Okay, so when I say big money, I mean institutional money.
Okay.
So the way Jeff Bezos behaves, or all those huge big billionaires, that is not. We're not talking about succession of billions here. We're talking, okay, what can you do? We're talking about institutional money, which it is very regulated. The rules are very clear. You have investment committee every 2 weeks. You have like um, auditors, and it's very heavily regulated because it is big money, but it is made up of a lot of small money of the small people. So it's a huge responsibility to get everyone's pensions to them so they can live off it, comfortably when they need it. So this is the kind of big money I used to work for. Later in my career, I did meet very wealthy individuals, nothing like Elon Musk, no? And
Right.
they have a way to behave which we're not going to go into, and I haven't written about
Right.
it.
So but you have written about financial frauds,
Yes,
scams.
yes.
Okay. So let me understand about, is what are these scams? Is it because they are directly handling money, so it is easy for them to go, or is it greed, or is it something else? How have you seen that in the real world, and how have you put it in your characters? Is it the same thing in the real world, in your books, or is it something different that you have created? What is your understanding about the human mind? Because people who deal with money, they also have money. It's not that they know. So what is it that drives them for money?
You
Scams.
know, in my first book, I write about it because okay, so at the end of each of my books, I have an author note telling about the real case and explaining how it what is the correlation, how much of it is in the book or not. So there is also an author note always at the end of the book explaining what I did with the real case. As far as getting into someone's mind, like for example, my friend from the first book, he was very well off. He was okay. Okay. It's not like he had to bring bread to his little children at home. This is not, an Hans Christian Andersen novel. It isn't. I don't know. I've thought about it, and this is a question you ask me, and I have no answer. I don't know why he did what he did. It's something that I wrote the book to try to understand. Um, I think it's partly greed, partly maybe excitement. Uh, why do people bet? This is the stupidest thing you can do. Why do people bet? They bet because it is exciting. And I'm thinking it was exciting. It was, you used your wits, maybe. Um, and you made money. So I think it's a combination, but I can't tell you that this is the way it is because my friend paid a very high personal price in the end. So I'm also thinking maybe they don't think of the consequences when they do it, not all the way through. I don't have a good answer.
Yes,
For,
indeed, indeed. One more question here then. With the change society now, earlier it used to be that, okay, men might be much more ambitious and they want to do all those things, whatever good or not so good. Even earlier on, even in Shakespeare's Macbeth, they used to say that Lady Macbeth was very ambitious and Macbeth was there. But nowadays, a lot of strong women are there. Is it about then all about strong men, or men who want to have more money, or is it also in the role of women is increasing into these financial ambitions? How do you look at that in today's time? Is it more of ambition driving them? Is it more women are fine with getting involved into big
Let's
money
talk
and
about let's talk about today, and let's talk about statistics, because you can't say 2024 is good. If you look at S&P 500 and you look at the number of female CEOs there, you will hardly get to 10%. 90% of the CEOs in S&P 5 are men. Okay? In Tel Aviv, zero CEOs are females. I don't know how it is in India, but saying that 2024 is vastly different to previous times is not true. Most of about 85% of the mutual fund money, and I saw this research from 2022, so this is quite recent. 85% of mutual fund money, which is mutual funds is very big money as well. Is managed by teams of all male investors. So saying that today it's different, I think that's missing the point. It's not that different. And so my books actually come and tell you this is not that different. This is in my second book, the female protagonist wants to go for a job. It's as and she has a much more experience than her male counterpart. She's been in the company longer. She's very good at what she does. Still, he came just last year, but he's an equal competitor. Why? Only because he's a man. If it were the other way around, they wouldn't even consider her. What I'm saying is women still have a long way to go to get to even to equality, let alone majority. So I want to reflect that in my books. I'm not trying to fix that. I want to reflect that, let people think, oh, this is what she has to do to get the job. It is so much more than what he has to do. I want them to think. I don't give solutions in my books. I usually want just to make people think and reflect and, oh, this is the way it is? Okay. And then maybe something tiny will change.
Right, Sivan. Right. So there is much to learn about life, much to learn about financial, about investment, about cities, about using them, travel, as well as all the knowledge into one's books. So much to learn from you, and there is so much to people who'd like to learn from you and get in touch with you. So, what is the best way for them to get the best of you, Sivan?
I have a newsletter which I send every 2 weeks, and you can. I don't know how are you sharing links, but I think
I will do that.
okay. So I have a newsletter that I share every 2 weeks, talking about finance. My last newsletter, for example, I was writing about the power of the female P, which is purchasing power, because I went to see Taylor Swift, and 90% of the audience was women, and it made me think, oh my God, look at that. And you read all these articles about Taylor coming to a city, going to Edinburgh and putting in $1 billion into that city's economy, or I think maybe not Scotland, not Edinburgh, but even though $1 billion. And this is from women who came to see Taylor and who stayed in the hotels, etc., etc. So I have like this whole newsletter about the power of the female purse and how people who underestimated it actually lost money. So I have a newsletter. You can find it if you go onto my website or subscribe. And in my website, you can also find my books. And so website and newsletter. And I have an Instagram, but I'm not that, I'm a little bit active there, but not too much.
Wonderful. I'm sure people will be. We'll put all the information on the YouTube description and show notes. So, with this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live.
Well, it was
Thank you so
longer
much.
than we thought, wasn't it?
Some stories need to be told in the best manner possible. This was one such story.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me.
With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.